Leading up to the game's release, did you know that I was actually featured in a Resident Evil Requiem ad? Yep, what you're looking at right here is a clip from the Facebook ad. Turns out it was also on TikTok and maybe other places as well. And it's from the initial reveal of the game back in the summer of 2025. This came as a big surprise to me, and I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, of course, I'd love to be a part of this. So I want to thank everyone who has watched my content and gave me some sort of support where I can do cool things like this, like be featured in this ad. It was a really cool experience. With that said, there's now a photo mode in Resident Evil Requiem. Let's take a look at it and see what we can learn from it. My name is Mir, and let's get started, shall we? To access the photo mode, go ahead and pause the game, and then press photo mode there at the bottom. So the first thing I want to mention is how helpful and accessible this photo mode is. And what do I mean by this? I get comments all the time from like old videos asking, how do I take this picture? How do I take this picture? And oftentimes I'm on PlayStation and they'll be on a different console or on PC. So what I like about this is that since I'm on a PS5, right there on the bottom left, it says for help. I'll hit the touchpad and it tells me how to take the picture. So for the PS5, it tells you to use the console screenshot feature. So you would hit the share button on your controller and then the menu pops up where you can take a screenshot. Of course, before you take your shot, go ahead and hide your display, and then that's when you would take your shot. The other piece that I find very helpful in this photo mode is the individual options, how it gives you a little brief description in the bottom right. So if I go from field of view, it tells me adjust a portion of the scene that appears in the frame. Basically, it tells you what each individual parameter does and how it affects your photo. This is a fantastic feature, and I feel like they're kind of putting me out of a job, but you know, that's cool. You can also access the photo mode in cutscenes as well. Now, your options will be limited, so you won't be able to move the camera or anything, but still, there are moments in the game that are framed really nicely, so you can still pause the game, add filters, brightness, contrast, all that stuff. So the option is there. You just can't move the camera around. So let's start with the camera tab. Here you have your field of view, and if you move it to the right, this is your wide angle, which introduces your wide angle distortion, where your foreground and your background, they look like they're spread apart. They look like they're further away from each other. Now, if we go to the left, this here is your telephoto, and this also introduces your telephoto compression, where your foreground and your background, they look like they're compressed. They look like they're right next to each other. Where I would recommend you use this is zoom in, use your telephoto mainly for portraits, makes people look a lot more flattering, and your wide angle. Use these for areas like this, where you have like a hallway or like leading lines going to a point into the horizon, or you're trying to capture your subject in a scene, kind of like here. A wide angle would be perfect for this. Next is your camera roll, and if you move it left or right, you basically rotate your image, and you actually have the ability to do a portrait image. So if you go to -90, this will give you a nice portrait image. So next you have your foreground blur, background blur, and your focus distance and depth of field here at the bottom are actually all tied together. And let's go ahead and turn on your foreground and background blur. This blur in photography is known as bokeh. And if I move the foreground blur, you'll notice that nothing's really happening. The background blur, you can actually see that it increases that. But to get an idea, let's go ahead and max these out. Foreground and background blur. And I'm going to change the focus distance. That way you can see it. So you can see here at the bottom of the screen, that's your foreground. And then you have your background. Now, you do have the ability to autofocus, like it shows here on the left, but I would absolutely recommend you learn how to focus using manual controls. Here's how I would recommend you use your blur. Go ahead and turn your foreground and background blur to max settings, and you're going to need to adjust the focus distance and depth of field first. So your focus distance, if we move it backwards and forwards, you can see where the focus point is going to be. So what location is your focus point? And your depth of field is going to be how wide is your focus point. So if we decrease this, you can see that the little sliver of focus, it's becoming smaller. And then if you go the opposite direction, it becomes wider. So with the same settings that I just had on, you can see it just doesn't look good. So if we move this focus distance back, you can see that the focus point is slowly making its way to grace. And then you can kind of adjust how you want the background to look as well. And what I would do is take your depth of field and put it on the lowest setting possible and move your focus distance, especially if you're taking a picture of someone, and make sure their eyes get in focus or as close to focus as possible. So in this case, that's where the focus is going to be. And then increase your depth of field. So you can see her eyes are in focus, and then there's still parts of her, like her hand, her right hand, not in focus. So let's move the depth of field again. And now she's completely in focus. And now you have the ability to change the background blur and foreground blur. So if I turn this on or off, you won't be able to see this, but the background blur you can definitely see. So you can kind of adjust, like how much do you want the background blur to blend in. So that's my recommendation. Max out all the settings and then fine tune the focus to where you want someone to see. So if it's a picture of someone like Grace here, focus the eyes and then adjust the blur accordingly. So let's move on to the character tab. And here you have your poses and expressions. And these are personal preference, to be honest. So really, I'll just stick with the default one to kind of show the mechanics of this. And then of course your expressions, I'll keep it at neutral. But the one I want to talk about is this right here, eye position. So if I hit look at camera, she'll attempt to look at the camera. So basically you can move the camera around, hit look at camera, and she's going to look at it, right? Now here's one thing I noticed, is that if I go up and hit look at camera, she only moves her eyes just a little bit up. Then if I go down, there's a lot more movement, like when you're below the eye line. Pathetic. So yeah, the poses and expressions aren't really for me, but the eye position thing, that's a pretty cool feature. Next is your Effect 1 tab, and here you have your brightness, contrast, vignette, and bloom. So brightness is pretty self-explanatory. You can brighten or darken your image, and your contrast is your relationship between your highlights and your shadows, or the brightest point of your image and your darkest point of the image. So right now it looks neutral, everything's okay. It's as the game artist intended. So if you increase the contrast, you'll notice that there's going to be a hard defined line between your highlights and your shadows. So everything doesn't blend in as it should. So it gives it more of a quote unquote crunchy feel to it. So I would recommend contrast, use it sparingly, use it where you need it. This is especially helpful if you're a content creator, for example, as you can use contrast in your thumbnails, and it'll give you a less flat and washed out image. It'll make the image pop just a little bit more. Next is your vignette. And if you go ahead and increase the vignette value, you'll notice in the corners of the image that it starts to darken up. It's like an oval from the outside of the image circling into the middle of the image. And the reason why you would want to use a vignette is to have someone's eyes focus more towards like the center of the image. It's a very subtle effect, especially in this game, but that's why you would use it. So in this example, I'll just go ahead and turn it off. Next is your bloom, and if you turn this on, you'll notice that it doesn't really do anything. But when you start increasing it, you're going to start to notice a glow. And this glow is from all the light sources. So you can see the sign above Grace's head. You can kind of see the street lamp by the warning sign. So your bloom is going to be where the sources of light are, and it gives off a glow if you want that effect. Moving on to your Effect 2 tab. And this one's pretty self-explanatory. You have filters that you can work with. This one I really like. And these are just personal preference. What would have been nice to see is being able to use these filters, but then adjust how much of the filter you want applied. Next is your lens distortion and your chromatic aberration. And your chromatic aberration won't be available until you have your lens distortion on. So in whichever direction you go, you can actually bend the image and give it more of like a fisheye look if you wanted to. And then on top of that, you can add your chromatic aberration, which is typically a lens defect, and you can see it in the corners. And you'll notice that the colors are getting separated. In photo editing software, there's usually like a little checkbox to remove chromatic aberration. So in this case, it's more of like an artistic thing. If you want it, the option is there. Next tab is your frames and stickers. And here you have a bunch of frames that fit the game theme. So I like this one, this little TV, the wanted sign, the missing sign, film strip. Like there's so many good ones. I'm a simple person. I'd like stuff like this where it gives it more of like a movie vibe. But there are a bunch of options in here for you. Then of course you have some stickers, and typically this isn't my thing, but I know how popular this game is, how popular the franchise is, and honestly I think more than 10 stickers would have been nice. I won't lie. So once you found a sticker that you like, and in this case I would hit X, I can actually place the sticker where I want it. I can make it larger, I can make it smaller, I can rotate it if I wanted to. So the option is there, but honestly, more stickers would be nice, and the game logo would be incredible, especially for making thumbnails. And this last tab here, you have the ability to turn on or off different options, which that comes down to personal preference, but I would honestly leave this on, the photo grid display. This grid is known as the rule of thirds. It's not a definite rule, but you're allowed to break it. This will help you compose your shots. So this you can leave on when you're taking a picture. So honestly, I like this so far, but I do want to try this, and of course I can't have this video made and not put Leon in it. So let's get some Leon pictures. If you found this video helpful, please like this video, and check out this playlist of other photo modes I've looked at in other games. That's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you next time.